So we've had an absolutely amazing day riding a 1290 Super Adventure S. Clues in the name really. This is an adventure bike, but it's got an amazing amount of super attached to it. It's an unbelievable machine. Firstly was our kick-off, perceptions. When someone like me, or when I look at a big adventure bike like this, and it is big, I mean, you look at it from afar especially, and you think this is a big adventure bike. At the end of the day, like, dry weight on this is 220 kilos, so you can imagine a wet weight is going to be about 250-ish kilos. It's quite big in its stature. I'm personally not the biggest guy in the world, and I look at this and they're just big bikes, and my perception is when I look at a bike like this is it's going to be heavy, it's going to be big, it's probably going to be a bit slow, it's going to wallow in the corners, not handle very well, and I probably need to be about 60 before I need to consider a bike like this. Well, all that perception, you can just sort of like wrap it up and chuck it out the window. Because within about half a mile of riding this new bike, you know, it's just entirely changed my perception of what an adventure bike, a big adventure bike like this, can feel like and how enjoyable it can be to ride. It's absolutely phenomenal. I think, you know, first impressions are when you jump on the bike, particularly being a little bit short, I'm about 5'9", and you jump on the bike and expecting to really haul it off the side stand, because that's what I've been used to when I've rode sort of similar bikes. But immediately, straight away, it's like straight up. It's very, handles its weight incredibly well. Now, they've done a lot of stuff to this new Super Adventure S to make it like that. In fact, the whole bike is 90% new, so that's a huge amount of development work gone into this. They've taken the old bike, sort of put it to one side and almost remade the whole bike, and it's incredible. So firstly, on the ergonomics side and geometry side, they've changed it. So they've made it about 15 mil shorter in the front, and they've lengthened the swing arm. That makes it more nimble, but I think it also improves the low speed maneuverability. But the big thing that they've done with the weight is that they've actually split the fuel cell, the fuel tank, into 3 different sections. So rather than having like a big 25 litre tank, or 23 litres, which is this one, and therefore 25 kilos, all sat at the very top of the bike, you know, really tipping you off to the side as soon as you get off that perfect 90-degree angle, they've actually split it into 3 cells. So you've got a big cell down here, you've got a big cell the other side, and you've got a little fuel reservoir at the top here. And what that does, well, 25 kilos is quite a lot of weight, and at the top of a motorcycle it's quite a lot of weight too. But when they've moved it down to the bottom parts, it's just made it so much more balanced than you could ever imagine, and super impressed. In fact, I would say it's so balanced, probably the most balanced adventure bike I've ever ridden anyway, and certainly comparative to their 790 Adventure R, which has that same sort of philosophy with the fuel tank system. In fact, so much balanced that we're having little competitions when we're coming up to traffic lights, who could stay on the bike without putting their feet down for the longest. So we're sort of like doing this trial stance as we get to the traffic lights, which was a lot of fun and really proves how good it is. The other thing that we did as well, we had a little off-road section, which I normally steer well clear on a big bike like this, because normally for me when I'm going off-roading, I'm always crashing the things, and I know what it takes to pick up a big bike like this. Well, we took it up a little trail just for the obligatory I've done off-road on an adventure bike sort of picture. But instantly it was very confidence inspiring, because it has a really tight turning circle. The bars, you can get really far side to side, so you can make a really nice turn. And obviously also because the weight is low as well, you can really get a nice turn on this, and it doesn't get off balance very easy, and I was super impressed with that. The next thing, of course, is the beast of a motor that this bike has got. It's a 1300cc V-twin lifted, I guess, from the Super Duke, although it's not an accurate review to say that this bike is basically the Super Duke R on stilts. That is not an accurate review. The Super Duke R is an aggressive bike, and you ride that bike, and to an extent it's a bit intimidating really, because it's so fast and it's so aggressive. And you know, ultimately it's called the Beast for a reason. It's an aggressive bike and it deserves its name. This engine has been reworked, and you can tell that straight away. It's not as aggressive, it's not as snappy, and it's just a lot less intimidating, which I think really matches the style of bike that this is. That's not to say it's lacking in power in any way at all. It really isn't. This bike has got as much power as you could ever want. I mean, we've been doing some quite spirited riding today, and a mixture of, you know, sort of calmer stuff and a bit more spirited stuff. And this it's got more grunt than Miss Trunchbull, this bike. It's unbelievable. About 100 foot-pound of torque as well. And the way that the V-twin works with it as well, again, you might think of a V-twin and think that's going to be a lumpy and chuggy engine. Well, I'm telling you, it really isn't. And I mean, the amount of refinement on this Super Adventure S with this V-twin is incredible. It is so smooth, and the way that it hooks up with the quick shifter is just outstanding, and you get that gear change right at the certain RPMs and it just pops into the next gear. It's like addictive, just banging up the box. It's such an impressive engine setup. Next big thing to talk about this bike is the handling. And yeah, I suppose there's a couple of different elements to that. Firstly, obviously the geometry changes that they've done to the frame, not only to make it shorter and more suitable for shorter riders, but to make it handle better as well. As I said, they've shortened the front, which has made it a little bit more nimble, but they've lengthened the swing arm as well. So you get a great amount of nimbleness and flickability, but you also get the stability that comes with a longer swing arm as well. And I think that makes a fantastic handling motorcycle. I mean, you know, if you're out riding with guys who are on sports bikes, they ain't gonna get away from you on this bike. And I have heard of people, and first track day I got overtaken by a guy on a GS 1200. You could definitely take this bike on a track day and you'd put some riders to shame on sports bikes, definitely, because it's absolutely rapid. Next thing to talk about on the handling front is the second generation WP semi-active suspension, which is a suspension package like I've personally never ridden on before. You access it all via the LCD screen on the front, and it just enables like an unbelievable balance between comfort and sporty handling that you just would never get from analog suspension. Case in point, you know, if you really want to go out and hoon it, which is obviously very doable on a bike like this or on this bike, put it in the sport mode and everything immediately is just stiffened up. The compression damping is stiffened up, the preload is stiffened up, and it actually rides pretty flipping sporty, which is very impressive. But then on the flip side, you want to have a bit more of a leisurely ride, perhaps you're going over some more bumps. If you put it into comfort mode, all of a sudden, and it's quite dramatic, the difference. It's not like you're just changing the modes for the sake of it and they're not really being any different. You take it from sport mode into comfort mode and you can very much tell the difference. All of a sudden it's sort of like wafting over stuff, and the priority in the suspension setup is totally changed from out and out traction, which is what the sport mode would be set up for, where it's a lot more stiff and you get a lot more acceleration and braking support, to the comfort mode, which actually the priority then is about keeping the bike and you still and having the wheels front and back do all the work and keeping you comfortable. You take a step further than that and you also have an automatic mode as well, which effectively really cleverly uses the 6-axis IMU to measure all of the inputs that you're giving to the motorcycle. So say for example, I go on a blast out, and typically like today, you know, we have 10 minutes where we're on a nice road and it's quite spirited, and then the next minute we're in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. So your suspension has got quite a bit to deal with in that circumstances. So in the automatic mode, it will pick up what inputs you're giving it. So say you get hard on the throttle and you start braking hard, all of a sudden the preload is up, the compression damping is up, and it's gone into a sport mode, and you can definitely feel that. And then you're going to roll into a town or into a 30-mile-an-hour situation, and you back everything off, all of a sudden everything becomes a little bit more softer and a bit more plush. And I tried quite a few of the different settings, and automatic was absolutely fantastic. Really impressive setup. I think, you know, suspension is something, you know, often as a rider I just get on a bike and just ride it, to be honest. And even my own bike, I didn't change the suspension settings for about 2 years. I just bought it and rode it as it was. I think, you know, it's a little bit intimidating. Do I click it? Which way do I click the clickers? Do I need to put more preload on? Do I need to put more rebound on? It's quite intimidating. The fact that you can interface that with the LCD and very clearly see what's going on, I just think you're going to get a better experience as a rider. You're going to maximize this bike by having easy access to all these different features on the suspension. So really impressive setup. In terms of technology, the Super Adventure S has got a spec sheet longer than Gandalf's beard. So I'm going to put in a really useful video link to KTM where they had some engineers explain all of the features of the new bike, and they go into it very accurately and in quite a lot of detail as well. But I will pick out some of the standout features. Of course, the LCD screen is massively impressive. This is the one that's, I think it's about the same size as the one that was on the Super Duke R, and that for me is one of the best LCD screens out there. But what they've done is they've lifted it to another level with the Super Adventure in terms of making it that much easier to operate and actually see what you're doing. It's very easy to click in and out of modes. It's very easy to see what you've done. If there's an error message come up, it's very easy to get to it, and the whole thing is incredibly intuitive. I think they've really maximized now, or they've taken it to another level what you can do with one of these LCD screens. It's really impressive. Of course, the other thing that I haven't talked about yet is the adaptive cruise control, and this is one of the big features of this motorcycle. Effectively, you got a Bosch radar up the front, and what that does is it monitors the traffic in front of you. So you're going to press your cruise control, but rather than just setting your cruise control and the bike is stuck at that speed, and then you put the brake on or pull the clutch in or something to deactivate the cruise control, it's actually based on a radar now, and that's going to keep you in line with the traffic. So say for example you've set your cruise control at 70 or 75 or whatever you want it, but there's a car pulls out and it's doing 50, your bike will slow down with that car in front and keep you at that safe distance, which you are in control of as well. Now, I don't like being right up someone's backside in terms of riding on a motorway, so I set it I think the furthest setting, and it's a really nice safe distance, but you can have it closer as well. The other thing that the adaptive cruise control does is it integrates the brakes, which when you read about it, it's a little bit scary actually, because on one hand you've got a radar that is picking everything up, including stationary cars, and it's got the ability to apply the brakes. So, you know, in my own little mind I'm thinking, well, what if it sees a stationary car and decides to slam the brakes on and do an emergency stop? Am I going to end up over the handlebars here? Well, the fact is that just doesn't happen, and we've just got to trust the engineers at Bosch who have developed this, that's not going to happen. And in all the testing that we did today, none of that happened. It was an incredible system, and particularly after you've done quite a long road or a long ride, I mean, it's an adventure bike, so you know, we've done 200 miles today. It's not out of the realms of possibility that you might have done quite a long ride. Stick the adaptive cruise control and just sail the way home, and you know, it's going to give you less fatigue basically. I think it's a really nice feature, and I think it's super impressive technology. Any downsides? Well, I'm sort of scratching my head a bit really, because it's just a massively impressive bike, and I think, yeah, I've definitely had my perceptions change with it. I think when you're going to come and buy a big adventure bike like this, you are making a decision to go down that route as opposed to a sports bike, or as opposed to a naked bike or something like that. But in terms of doing and being as good as an adventure bike could possibly be, and ticking as many boxes as it can do, I mean, it's hard to think of an adventure bike ticking more boxes. You know, yes, it can go and have a good scratch on a Sunday. Yes, it can keep with pretty much any sports bike. In fact, it was pretty ironic that at one point, and I'll try and clip it in, that we actually overtook a KTM RC8, which was the last sport bike that they did. I don't know whether they set that up or not, but it really did happen. Sign of the times, I suppose. What else can you do? You can have a super long trip. You can ride up and down the motorway in absolute comfort. What else can you do? You could probably do a little bit of off-roading on this. I wouldn't be super mad about doing really rough stuff because of the size of it. But that's the beauty again with the KTM range. They're not saying that this is the out and out best off-roader that they do. You know, they've got enduro bikes, they've got much lighter weight adventure bikes as well. Probably the pick of the choice being the 690 Enduro R, which obviously we own the 701 Enduro, which would be my pick of the bigger bikes for that sort of off-roading sort of stuff. Other than that, the tyres, Mitas tyres, first time I've ridden on them. Probably have a couple of question marks reference the tyres, but you know, you're really clutching at straws there. And at these wheel sizes, there are a lot of good and sticky rubber available if at an aftermarket level you wanted to swap them out. Other than that, you know, the fact that it hasn't got a jacuzzi on the back or a fridge built into it, you know, or the ability to turn into the bat bike, you know, there's not that many downsides to this bike. It's absolutely fantastic, and I think it's going to be really hard to beat from any manufacturer. So I hope you enjoyed that video. Please like, please comment, let us know what you think. Actually, if you want to check out one of these bikes, they're doing a bunch of tours around the UK where you got the opportunity to ride one of these. So go onto the KTM website, check that out, and we'll see you next time.